Hi, my name is attorney Damian Siwek. I'm a criminal defense and DUI defense attorney here in Southern California. If you found this video, chances are you're either just really into legal tech or you just got arrested for a DUI and now you're wondering, can ChatGPT help me win my DUI case? It's a topic that's coming up more and more, not just from clients, but from other attorneys too. So I want to take a few minutes to share my perspective on where ChatGPT fits into criminal defense, its limitations, and the risks you might not be thinking about, and whether the robots are actually coming for my job as a defense attorney. So the first major issue I want to discuss is ChatGPT can be confidently wrong. There's no question, ChatGPT is incredible technology. It's revolutionizing multiple industries and how we do a lot of things. I'm definitely not a hater, but when it comes to your DUI case, it has serious limitations and risks. First, the legal information it provides isn't always correct. Can it help you understand the basics? Sure, it can give you a general framework or outline of how a DUI case might unfold and give you a basic understanding of some legal defenses. But, and this is important, do not take what it says as gospel. ChatGPT pulls all of its knowledge from the internet, and we all know not everything online is true. So while it can be a helpful tool, you should take what it produces with a grain of salt. It very often gives one-size-fits-all responses when it comes to DUI or criminal cases, and these are anything but one-size-fits-all problems. But don't take it from me, take it from Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, the company that created ChatGPT. He made a profound admission on the first episode of OpenAI's new podcast regarding the degree of trust people have in ChatGPT. Altman observed, and I quote, "People have a very high degree of trust in ChatGPT, which is interesting because AI hallucinates. It should be the tech that you don't trust that much." Link in the description below. Now, I've got to give him credit for being so transparent and making that admission. ChatGPT and other large language models, LLMs, are known to hallucinate. In other words, they can generate information that sounds convincing, but is totally incorrect or even made up. And that's obviously a huge problem when you're looking for advice after a DUI arrest. Now, imagine if a lawyer did that, just fabricated a law out of thin air and advised a client. What would you call that? I'd call that malpractice, and yet that's exactly what ChatGPT is capable of doing and routinely does because it sources its information from the internet. Yet still, millions of people rely on it every day for research, work, personal advice, even parenting advice. Altman himself admitted to using ChatGPT extensively during his son's early months, recognizing both how helpful it can be and how risky it is to trust an AI that can be so confidently wrong. So if you have a good DUI lawyer, ask questions, talk through your case. That's part of the job. Open communication is key. But what you don't want to do is treat ChatGPT's answers as gospel, especially if your attorney tells you something different. It's totally fine to bring things up for discussion, but trusting AI over your lawyer will only undermine your attorney-client relationship, and that helps no one. One of my colleagues told me a story recently about how one of his clients was feeding his legal advice directly into ChatGPT and looking for a second opinion on his work. They were essentially asking ChatGPT to evaluate my colleague's case strategy, fact-check his recommendations, and critique his overall approach to the case. And here's the problem with that. And I'm going to get into far more detail with this in the next section. But AI doesn't even come close to having the full picture when it comes to handling a DUI case. Why? Because it's not human. There's far more that goes into a lawyer's professional judgment than just legal knowledge. We weigh human behavior, strategic timing, courtroom dynamics, and subtle cues that AI simply can't perceive. And as you already know, AI tools like ChatGPT are prone to hallucinations. They confidently make things up. That's not just unhelpful. In a legal case, it can be harmful on many levels. So basically, my colleague's client started second-guessing his decisions, and there was this erosion of trust that happened. The client started to lose faith in my colleague's real-world expertise because AI hallucinated a better legal plan which was fabricated and full of context-free analysis. It essentially produced bullshit. Now, there is a happy ending to this story where they were ultimately able to get on the same page and get a great case result. But the confusion and the stress that ChatGPT added to the representation was damaging and completely unnecessary. But it's not just clients using ChatGPT that are creating problems. Attorneys are getting burned by it too. We're seeing more and more cases where lawyers are submitting AI-generated motions and legal memos to the court only to get caught when those documents include fake, fabricated case citations. And well, judges are not amused. A recent example out of a Northern Illinois bankruptcy court is just the latest in a growing list. An attorney submitted a brief filled with bogus AI-generated citations and got nailed with a $5,500 joint and several sanction along with mandatory continuing legal education. For decades, attorneys have leaned and trusted on research tools like LexisNexis and Westlaw to guide them through complex issues. These platforms are built and vetted on reliable and verifiable sources. Every case citation they provide is real, and that matters. ChatGPT, on the other hand, is a different kind of tool, and I get the appeal. As lawyers, we're constantly battling the clock. Time is one of our most valuable resources, and it's also our enemy. So when an AI tool offers up what seems like a perfectly relevant case that fits your argument, it can feel like a gift, especially when you're racing to meet a filing deadline. But here's the reality. No matter how convenient it is, accuracy and authority always come first. You can't build an argument on a case that doesn't exist. A fake citation doesn't just weaken your position, it can sink it entirely. That's why judges are starting to clamp down on the use of unverified AI-generated content in court filings, and honestly, they're right to do so. So the temptation is understandable. The consequences are totally avoidable. But it begs the question, why do so many people trust ChatGPT's output implicitly? Sam Altman points out that while users are becoming more aware that AI can make mistakes, the convenience, speed, and conversational fluency of tools like ChatGPT have created a level of trust usually reserved for human experts or even close friends. That trust only grows as the AI remembers context, tailors responses, and offers help across a wide range of topics even when it's confidently and convincingly wrong. But there's an even bigger problem than that, which leads me to the second issue. ChatGPT is not private. There's no attorney-client privilege, no confidentiality, no ethical duty to the user. So this literally came out a few days ago on July 23rd of 2025. Speaking on Theo Vaughn's podcast, Sam Altman just confirmed what lawyers have been saying for over a year. There's no legal privilege when you use ChatGPT. Here's the quote. People talk about the most personal shit in their lives to ChatGPT, Altman said. People use it, young people especially use it as a therapist, a life coach, having these relationship problems and asking, what should I do? And right now, if you talk to a therapist or a lawyer or a doctor about those problems, there's legal privilege for it. There's doctor-patient confidentiality, there's legal confidentiality, whatever. And we haven't figured that out yet for when you talk to ChatGPT. So if you're asking ChatGPT legal questions, inputting your sensitive facts and details about your case, asking for legal strategy, pasting in contracts with private information, you're not getting legal advice. You are literally creating a digital paper trail of discoverable evidence that could be used against you. And with that, there's no attorney-client privilege. There's no confidentiality. There's no ethical duty. There's absolutely nobody to protect you. This creates a significant privacy risk as OpenAI could be legally compelled to hand over user chats in court. Again, this really highlights what Altman said above as to why people blindly trust ChatGPT so much. It might feel private, safe, friendly, and convenient, but lawyers are ethically bound to protect you. ChatGPT isn't, and it can be used against you. So the third issue that I want to bring up now is that ChatGPT cannot account for the human element in DUI and criminal cases. Representing someone in criminal court, whether it's for a DUI or any other charge, is a human problem that requires a human solution. And that, without question, is ChatGPT's biggest limitation. Handling a DUI, or any criminal case for that matter, isn't just about knowing the law, it's about understanding people and adapting to constant change. That's the biggest limitation of ChatGPT. As advanced as AI has become, it can't replicate, understand, or predict human relationships that play a critical role in the courtroom. I feel like this is more true with the practice of criminal defense than any other type of law. For example, in civil litigation where two lawyers are battling over money, they may never see each other again, so the fights tend to be contentious and downright nasty. Honestly, I've seen better decorum between a lion and a hyena on the Serengeti than between two civil attorneys in Stanley Mosque. But criminal defense is different. We work with the same prosecutors and judges regularly. And those relationships matter. If I go to trial on a DUI and win, that prosecutor will remember. And when I walk in to negotiate a future case, that prior experience and how I carried myself can absolutely influence the negotiation and the outcome of a new case. Professionalism, respect, and reputation go a really long way. That dynamic plays a real role in how cases are resolved because at the end of the day, we're all still human beings. And here's another thing that surprises a lot of people. Even though California DUI law is the same across the state, the way it's enforced isn't. DUI cases are handled differently not just from one county to the next, but even between courthouses within the same county, like Los Angeles. So a client might tell me their friend got an amazing deal on a DUI in one county and instantly assume they'll get the same thing on their case. But that doesn't mean the same deal is possible. You could take the same DUI case and get two completely different outcomes depending on where they're filed. A case in downtown LA might be treated very differently than the same case in Ventura. And that's because each courthouse has its own internal policies and procedures, personalities, and priorities. What flies in one courtroom might not even get considered in another. And that's something ChatGPT simply doesn't know. It can't factor in courthouse culture, prosecutorial discretion, or judicial temperament. It doesn't know which judges lean which way or which prosecutor remembers the time that you beat them in trial. Also, in a county as large as Los Angeles, there are thousands of prosecutors, which means the turnover is constant. You're always dealing with new faces and ongoing changes. At the same time, a prosecutor I've tried cases with might disappear for a few years, only to suddenly reappear in a different courthouse. That's because prosecutors are routinely rotated through different assignments and courthouses throughout the county, often with little or no notice. Why is that? It's part of their internal policy and career development structure. There are 38 courthouses in operation across LA County, 25 of which handle criminal cases. The internal assignments, who's working where, which courtroom a judge is sitting in, or what prosecutor is covering what calendar are constantly shifting, often on a daily basis. And none of this information is publicly announced or documented, and that's exactly the kind of nuance ChatGPT simply can't provide. The same applies to judges. They're regularly reassigned, temporarily filling in for colleagues who are retired, on vacation, or assigned to other duties. The legal landscape is in constant motion, and unless you're in the system every day, like me, you won't know what's really going on. So, how could this affect your DUI case? Let me give you a few examples. Well, let's just say on your scheduled court date, you might find yourself in front of a temporary judge known as a pro tem who could offer an indicated deal that undercuts the DA's stingy offer and is far more favorable than what the regularly assigned judge would have considered. You might also encounter an overworked deputy district attorney who's tied up in trial and eager to lighten their caseload, making them more willing to settle your case for significantly less than usual. I've also had cases where the DA simply got it wrong. In some DUI cases, I've seen prosecutors mischarge a case by listing the wrong BAC, thereby omitting a high BAC allegation that would normally trigger enhanced penalties like jail time, a longer license suspension, and steeper fines. I've also had cases where the DA didn't pay close attention to the reported speed. For example, I've represented clients who were clocked at going over 100 miles per hour, 30 miles over the posted speed limit, which qualifies for a speed enhancement carrying an automatic 60-day county jail sentence. But because the DA missed that detail, we were able to pivot and lock in a plea deal before the error was caught, avoiding both the jail time and the enhancement entirely. Moments like that are gifts. A seasoned defense attorney will recognize when it's time to pivot and take a deal on the table, because once those errors are discovered and corrected, the opportunity will vanish. But there's more. Different jury pools treat crime differently, and ChatGPT can't track how local juries will deal with the case. In some jurisdictions like Compton, it's harder to secure convictions. Juries there tend to be more skeptical of law enforcement and more sympathetic to defendants. And as a result, prosecutors are more inclined to offer better plea deals, knowing the odds of winning at trial are lower, like in Compton. Now, you contrast that with a place like North County, San Diego, where juries are generally more conservative and more likely to convict, even on marginal cases. Well, prosecutors there know they have a favorable jury pool, so plea offers definitely reflect that, and they're tougher. That's why relying on ChatGPT or AI-generated advice can be dangerous and misleading. It doesn't understand the subtle local factors that are constantly changing and not published anywhere that can shape the outcomes of cases. It can't give you real-time legal advice tailored to your unique facts because legal judgment requires experience, discretion, and a very deep understanding of nuance, things AI simply doesn't have. And this is why having an experienced DUI attorney matters, not just someone who knows the law and who can regurgitate it, but also understands the constantly shifting landscape, the people, the politics, and the unwritten rules that shape how the law is actually practiced from one courthouse to the next. ChatGPT can't do that simply because it's not human. But let's say you're still not persuaded and you decide to represent yourself in court and you're going to use your cell phone with ChatGPT. So you can represent yourself in criminal court in California. It's legally permitted under the 6th Amendment and California law. However, doing so and relying on ChatGPT or other AI tools comes with substantial risks and limitations. If you choose to represent yourself, you're taking on the full role of a criminal defense attorney, including but not limited to mastering courtroom procedure, the evidentiary rules, filing deadlines, cross-examining witnesses, handling objections on the fly, negotiating plea deals, and sentencing terms. Also, you're going up against a trained prosecutor who does this every day, and you'll have no professional advocate to shield you. Also, as I mentioned above, you have no duty of confidentiality or privilege using ChatGPT. And all of that happens in a system that doesn't slow down for you just because you're not a lawyer. Even before ChatGPT and AI, I see it every week, people trying to represent themselves in court, and it always ends in disaster. The reality is that representing yourself has always been a bad idea, and despite the hype, it's still a bad idea even with ChatGPT or AI. Believe it or not, someone's actually already tried this, and it was easily one of the funniest things I've seen in a courtroom since that lawyer showed up to a Zoom hearing stuck in a kitten filter. A man named Jerome DeWald, who was representing himself in a New York court, actually submitted a pre-recorded video presentation featuring what appeared to be an AI-generated avatar of a lawyer attempting to deliver legal arguments on his behalf. Needless to say, the judge immediately shut it down and sternly admonished DeWald for attempting to mislead the court. And the message was clear. AI avatars don't count as legal representation, and trying to pass one off as your attorney will not be taken lightly. Link in the description below. The truth is, you can't become a lawyer in a few minutes using AI, any more than you can become a doctor and perform surgery on yourself after watching a few videos. The stakes in a criminal case are far too high to rely on shortcuts or tech tools in place of real legal experience, especially in criminal law. Finally, do I worry about ChatGPT ever taking my job as a defense attorney? Not at all, and definitely not in my lifetime, and especially not in this specific area of the law. And it's for all the reasons I've already mentioned. The human elements involved in representing real people facing real consequences. It's simply not something ChatGPT can do. Now, if we ever get to a point where courts start allowing androids to roll into the courtroom and argue against each other, or if I see the T-1000 from Terminator 2 delivering a devastating closing argument that blows the jury away, well, I might feel differently at that point. But let's be real, the idea of software replacing certain legal tasks isn't new. We've already seen it with services like LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer, which have been around for decades helping people generate basic legal documents by filling in templates. AI is already and will continue to push the envelope even faster and further than ever before, and in all likelihood disrupting huge parts of the legal industry for years to come. But when it comes to actually standing next to a person who's scared, stressed, and fighting for their future in a criminal courtroom where nuance, judgment, and connection matter more than anything, that job still belongs to a human. So, in conclusion, can ChatGPT help you win your DUI case? No, it can't. In fact, I would respectfully argue, especially at this point in time, that it causes more harm than good to the attorney-client relationship. Clients come to me when something horrible has happened in their life. They're vulnerable and they need help, which is why I can empathize and understand why somebody would use ChatGPT in a desperate time. But as I've pointed out, ChatGPT can cause way more harm because it routinely creates answers that are fabricated, that sound like convincingly real solutions, when they're not, which makes the output completely useless. Furthermore, DUI and criminal cases are deeply human problems. They're not just about statutes and procedures. They involve people, judges, prosecutors, law enforcement, witnesses, jurors. And navigating those relationships takes more than legal knowledge. It takes emotional intelligence, experience, and strategic insight. A good defense attorney doesn't just argue the law. They read the room and they read the jurisdiction the case is filed in. They adapt to the psychology of the courtroom. They understand the local politics, the personalities involved, and the unspoken dynamics that never make it into a police report or case file. These are the kinds of things that aren't in any database and definitely not in ChatGPT's training set. That's why human representation matters in DUI and criminal defense, because real advocacy isn't just about citing the right case. It's about understanding people, timing, perception, and strategy. And that's the part AI can't replicate. So if you've been arrested for a DUI or you have criminal charges pending in Southern California, specifically Los Angeles County or surrounding counties, and you need a real human attorney to help you with your case, call me, attorney Damian Siwek, or better yet, reach out to us through our website for a faster response, and I'll be more than happy to give you a free consultation to let you know how I can be of service.